Hello and welcome to the January 2024 installment of the Microsoft Product Licensing Terms Update from the version 1 Software Asset Management Practice. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you're all doing
New
well
Year.
today.
Happy New Year, Carl. Yeah.
So, another new year, another month, and a bunch of new Microsoft licensing updates to report on. So quite a number of updates in the January release. So let's kick things off, Niamh. I know you've taken a couple of the updates. So yeah, let's see what you found of interest.
Thanks, Carl. Well, I'll start with the latest, which is the privacy and security terms. So on the 2nd of January, Microsoft updated the EU data boundary services terms to reflect expanded scope of the commitment. So I suppose looking, the EU data boundary kind of means any Microsoft computers or environments or physical data centers located solely in the European Union and the European Free Trade Association. So what they did was when I had a look and compared, last month versus kind of this month, what they've done is they have updated kind of the section where they talk about kind of remote access and protecting customers and directory data. There's a new section in the EU data boundary services where they talk about service and platform quality and management. And it's really kind of where they say that pseudonym
Pseudonyms.
pseudonyms of personal data may be transferred outside of the EU data boundary. When they need to kind of monitor and maintain service quality or to ensure accuracy of statistical measures of service use or performance. So that was kind of the key update there. They also updated in the privacy and security terms, they added Microsoft Purview to the core online services section. And really kind of what that means is because I guess with Purview kind of replaced, a lot of the Microsoft kind of 365 compliance services. So again, you see kind of a marked difference between what's included in the core services for definitely the Microsoft 365 compliance services and to a lesser degree, the Microsoft Azure core services. And again, the Purview, just to kind of recap, is where, it's the set of solutions to kind of help manage data from data governance, protection, etc., wherever that lives. The second part of the privacy and security terms is where they've updated Microsoft Defender XDR to reflect kind of the new branding. And that's kind of as simple as that. And the XDR again is kind of where you get that set of services through the Microsoft Defender portal. And then I suppose I looked at the GitHub offerings. So it looks as though, for the first time ever, we have GitHub offerings available through the MCA program, as well as through the Enterprise Agreement or EAS program. Interesting enough, when I just had a quick look, and maybe some of you might kind of correct me here if I've spotted something that that I'm incorrect in assessing, is I had a look at what was in the MCA, and so included are like GitHub Actions, Advanced Security, GitHub Packages, and those three have a license prerequisite for GitHub Enterprise User SL, which from what I can see is not in the availability table for MCA. So I presume that's going to change, but that's pretty much it from me for this month. Thanks, Carl.
Great stuff. Thanks, Niamh. So I had a look at the universal terms this month, and there was a couple of brief updates. One on the updated competitive benchmarking language that Microsoft have applied to the January update. So just looking back at the previous product terms for December, we could see slightly different language around what Microsoft calls competitive benchmarking. So what does this mean? So what we've seen in January is Microsoft have broadened the term to include both products and services. So kind of a slight deviation in the language. But also we're seeing I suppose, a much more stern approach to how Microsoft will treat individuals who are conducting competitive benchmarking against Microsoft online services. But that customer is also using Microsoft's online services to deliver these products that they're competing against Microsoft. So it's a bit of a funny one. So in that scenario, Microsoft have added in some new terminology or some new language just around that. If you are doing competitive benchmarking, you're basically waiving the right to not disclose any applicable information that you've used to conduct that benchmarking exercise. That would, in effect, allow Microsoft to replicate the same benchmark. So, if you don't waive the right to hand over that information to allow for a replication of that benchmarking by Microsoft, then in effect, Microsoft are saying that you've got to stop using the online service. So obviously kind of a niche scenario, and probably not something that comes up that often, but I guess it's probably something that Microsoft are potentially concerned about and putting in some safeguards to protect them into the future. We also saw just some slight update to the change in Microsoft's language around copyright infringement on generative AI. It's trying to come to me there. So basically, the Microsoft Generative AI Services customer copyright commitment. There's some clarity in there. So just so you're aware, Microsoft states they have an obligation to defend customers against third-party intellectual property claims under a customer's volume licensing agreement, where the customer's use or distribution of, say, output content of a covered product takes place, and that that Microsoft will provide a certain level of defense, but obviously that comes with a whole host of additional terms and conditions. So in the supporting blog, what I'm going to do is I'll put those into the blog. There's quite a lot of information in it, and again, like always, use the links in the associated blogs. You can drill down into this in a little bit more detail. But obviously everybody's quite concerned around intellectual property and AI and who owns content and how it's created. So this is quite an interesting one for customers to look at, particularly where they're looking at implementing many of the Microsoft AI technologies that are out there. I think Copilot seems to be top of everyone's agenda these days. So definitely worth a look to see what the impact of that might be. So I know Will or Richard, you've had a look at a couple of the updates this month. You want to quickly run through what you found?
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking on what you said there about the about Copilot, just towards the end of last year, Microsoft announced its expansion of Copilot access in education, and that kind of moves me to the one of the changes that I looked at, the Microsoft 365 change, which is that Microsoft added Copilot for Microsoft 365 to EES availability table. So with Microsoft has now added Microsoft Copilot with commercial data protection to all faculty and higher education students aged 18 and above. And they've also added Copilot for Microsoft 365 eligibility to include education faculty and staff. So this is basically them going ahead and expanding the availability to education and enrollment for education solutions. So that was the first one I looked at. The other one was the Microsoft Dynamics 365 services. So I'll just read out the change and then I'll pick out 1 or 2 points from this. The change is added Dynamics 365 field service contractor user SL to EA, EAS, and MCA availability tables, and added specific terms. Added Dynamics 365 finance premium user SL to EES, EAES, MCA, and MPSA availability tables, license prerequisites table, and purchasing minimums. Now, so just picking on the very first one, the Dynamics 365 field service contractor user SL. With regards to the service specific terms for Dynamics 365 Field Service Contractor User SL. There are specifications on who can use the products. These are vendors or contractors engaged by the enrolled affiliates enterprise that have been assigned a Microsoft Entra ID. So not everybody will be able to access it. It's specific to those with the Microsoft Entra ID. Now, the other point they mentioned was the Dynamics 365 Finance Premium. I'd like to draw attention of our customers to the purchase minimums. The way they've put it is that you need a minimum of 20. However, this can be split between Dynamics 365 Finance and Dynamics 365 Finance Premium. So it doesn't have to be an individual minimum of 20 for each. It can be combined. And then the last one I looked at was a glossary where Microsoft clarified the definition for output content. And output content in this instance means any data, text, sound, video, image, code, or other content generated by Microsoft Generative AI Service in response to inputs. And inputs then means whatever an external person or external user has inputted into the system, and output is whatever is generated from that generative AI. So those are the three things I looked at.
Great. So it's interesting. Every month the terms around AI just seem to get more complicated and complicated, right? So, William, over to you then, just to wrap things up.
Thank you. Yeah. So there's two areas. So the first is Azure, and then the second is all about Defender. So on the Azure one, they've basically removed all reference to Azure Information Protection Premium Plan 1 AIP. So this is from April 2024. It will no longer be available as a charged license, but the functionality will continue, and it's just because it's increasingly been sort of embedded in more and more Office applications. So it's the labeling and tagging of documents for sensitivity. So that level of labeling has essentially become a default norm within Word and documents. So from April this year, it will no longer become a chargeable license. And then the second one was, it's a bit convoluted about Microsoft Defender. So they brought out a whole load of new SKUs, such as Microsoft Defender for Identity Frontline, for Office 365 Frontline, for Endpoint Frontline, and also for Cloud Apps Frontline. And they've added all those to the availability table. Basically, anything with a frontline tag to it or branding name to it, the same rules apply as it would if it was the F SKUs, the frontline SKUs. So the user must have a device of 10.9 inches or less. They must share that primary work device with other people. They can also, if softwares and services basically that's accessed from that shared device requires it to be assigned a license that includes use of those software and services. So it's all the standard frontline criteria, but it's just a whole load of new Defender products basically that they've added to the availability table. And that was that's those.
Great stuff. So as always, if you have any Microsoft licensing related questions, don't hesitate to contact us here at the version 1 Software Asset Management Practice. It's quite a lot of updates to take in, and I think probably a lot of supplementary reading off the back of today's video. So, as always, check out the associated blog that we publish each month if you want to drill down into the actual terms themselves in a little bit more detail. As always, again, if you have any questions or queries around all things Microsoft licensing, or for that matter, if you have any other software vendor licensing related queries, feel free to reach out to us here at the Software Asset Management Practice at version 1. We would be delighted to help you. Particularly important for customers right now as we kind of approach the first half of the calendar year. There's quite a lot of customers out there with enterprise agreements and the horizon coming up in May and June. So if you're looking to get ahead and start to plan for those renewals or true ups, don't hesitate to reach out to us. So thanks everybody for today's feedback and updates, and we'll see you on the February update call. Take care.
Thanks, Carl.
Bye, everyone.